Some places look at the increased amount of money required to win in college football and say, this stinks. We're not doing that. And what Texas Tech is not one of those places. We have Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech here to discuss that very matter because all of a sudden, Chris, Texas Tech has got a top 5 transfer portal class in the country, trailing only on 24/7's rankings, Ole Miss and LSU. And this is from a little old school down in Lubbock, but this is what can happen when you make a necessary, in some ways, financial commitment, right? Is you can overinflate everyone's expectations for the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think Texas Tech was one win, one conference win away from playing for the Big 12 championship last year. And I think we are really close. We need to fix some things. We need to fix the trenches. But I think Texas Tech has looked at NIL collectively as an opportunity to even things up and like, okay, wait, so we can kind of do some of these things now. Well, let's go. And I think there's a lot of oil and gas money in West Texas, a lot. I mean, there's a show called Landman on Paramount Plus right now that is largely based on the oil and gas industry in West Texas. And so many of these folks are either tech grads or tied to Texas Tech in some way. And I think that there's a lot of disposable income that they said, you know what? I don't want to go buy another boat or plane. I want the feeling of winning and winning big. And so you can't replace that, but you can, try to put your best foot forward and try to go. So that's what they've done. I mean, they brought in a big time football recruiting class and realizing it doesn't guarantee us anything, but we are trying. We are trying, and they did.
Yeah, and I can respect that because I think, Texas A&M in particular is a major boogeyman in the NIL and portal space. They're just buying kids. They've got no culture. They do all this sort of stuff. And look, I think it's fair to criticize what Jimbo Fisher was unable to accomplish whilst there with tremendous resources. I think Mike Elko can accomplish a lot of the things that they didn't when Jimbo was in charge. But I, as a college football fan, Chris, I would rather be Texas A&M than be any one of a bunch of universities that people look at and go, do you really care? Are you really that Cal football, Stanford football? Are you that into it? Do you care that much? Or is it just kind of a fun thing that you want to go to on a Saturday? Like, you're not trying to be at the top of the sport. And I would rather you try and fail than not try at all. Maybe it's because I'm a Mariners fan and I watch them not invest in their team and not try. And look, it's not going to work out every time. It never does. But was there a moment in time? Was it, the paying of players becoming above board instead of it all being handshake agreements and back alley deals and all that sort of stuff? Was that kind of the turning point where collectively Lubbock decided, you know what, let's go, let's do this. We can make this happen.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that the word collective, right? And no pun intended, or maybe it was, but they got really organized and aligned. And I don't think every university is that way. I mean, they have been. It's called the Matador Club. There's been a lot of schools across the country that have reached out saying, "How are y'all setting this up? How are y'all doing this? How is this?" So they were just they actually hired somebody that used to be working the NCAA compliance to make sure that they were, following the rules and doing it the right way. I mean, all these things, but it's alignment. It's the big donors, it's administration, and it's your coaches with some of these sports. And everybody's on the same page, even the school president. So, and I don't know, I think a couple places there's multiple collectives, or there's kind of, you're working against each other in many ways, but not here. Everybody's aligned. Everybody's on the same page. You've got regents that are helping run the collective. So those are the top of the food chain guys, and they're very interested in athletics, which I'm a fan of. I'm a fan that they are a fan of athletics, right? So that is good stuff. But I think that they've gotten a little taste of, you're just this close, and then we can use our resources to try to take that next step. If we sit and do nothing, we're always going to be just a little bit closer, not near enough. But I think because what I was from the football standpoint, they went and added 7 linemen, big time guys. They got a second team, all Big 12 defensive tackle. They got one of North Carolina's stud offensive tackles that decided not to stay and play for Bill Belichick. That's like 6'8", 330. It should be a draft pick at some point, Howard Sampson. I mean, they spent a lot of their resources on big people. And ultimately, that's what's going to win is in the trenches. And their lines of scrimmage weren't quite good enough last year, and they knew it, so they tried to fix it.
Yeah, I think we saw it in the Super Bowl on Sunday. What happened? The Eagles didn't have to blitz a single solitary time because they just got pressure with 4. And the Chiefs' offensive line couldn't hold up. The 2 times Mahomes has lost the Super Bowl, you know what's happened? His offensive line completely and utterly broke down because their defensive front was better. I want to shift this over to football to wrap up today's show and look at Texas Tech's schedule going into next year. Under the radar game at home against Oregon State. I always shout out the Bees any chance that I get here on the show. And I think that'll be an improved Oregon State team. Malik Murphy at quarterback. That's a name that some Tech fans might be familiar with. But as you look at the rest of the conference schedule, I mean, you got a lot of heavy hitters from last year's Big 12 title race. This is the most unpredictable league in the country. Year in and year out is kind of how it seems. Anyone can beat anyone. Anyone can make a run to the conference championship game. But you have BYU, Kansas State, Arizona State, Kansas, and Utah on the Big 12 slate. It's a year where Tech can beat any of those teams, but none of those things are going to be easy, Chris.
And this is partly why the previous conversation. I mean, they knew it. They're trying to graduate from just, hey, this 8-9 win team to trying to get to that 10-11 win category and play in Arlington. The toughest game to me, just because it's the first one, and I think there's a bit of an unknown there, and they've got a new quarterback that ran the ball a ton last year at a previous stop, but the game in Utah, just because it's the first conference game and it's on the road. But there's a stretch between, I think it's October the 18th through November the 8th, and you mentioned some of these contenders. 3 of those 4 contenders are in that 4-game stretch, and Oklahoma State is in that stretch too. And no
buys, no buys anywhere in there. That's just a consecutive rundown.
Yep, that's exactly right. But you get you have to go to Arizona State, you have to go to Kansas State, you get BYU and Oklahoma State at home in that little 4-game stretch. If you've done taken care of your business up to that point, that little stretch will decide whether you play in Arlington or not, and that will determine whether you are a legit contender or not. But bring it on. I mean, and again, we think these will be the contenders based on last year. However, as we saw last season, nobody knows.
You don't know.
Nobody knows.
You never truly know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Oklahoma State and Utah, lots of praise for those guys last year, and then they were rock bottom. And then Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham, which Texas Tech did beat last year, one of the few teams that did beat Arizona State, was picked dead last, and they ended up winning it. So we'll see.
Texas Tech, one of 2 teams to beat Arizona State when Sam Leavitt started at quarterback last year. Everybody else failed to do so. They lost to Cincinnati, but they did not have Leavitt in that game. They were starting Jeff Sims. And all right, well, I don't need to go down the Jeff Sims rabbit hole there. I think we understand why he was the backup quarterback there. Chris Level, Locked On Texas Tech. Check him out if you have not already. Appreciate the time. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.